For many couples who have been married for decades, the idea of growing old together sounds like a reward, something to be proud of after years of hard work, sacrifice, and shared life. But behind the smiles in old photo albums, the joint bank accounts, and the Sunday morning routines, something else can be brewing, something quiet, invisible, and painful. It's not always abuse, infidelity, or shouting matches that destroy marriages after 60. Sometimes it's something much harder to name: emotional erosion. Let's start with the illusion of comfort. After 30 or 40 years together, many couples operate like well-oiled machines. They know each other's routines, habits, even the exact way the other takes their tea. They've raised children, built a home, and possibly retired from careers. On the surface, that comfort looks like stability, but beneath it, something dangerous can hide: neglect. Not intentional neglect, but emotional neglect. When couples stop growing together emotionally, when real conversations are replaced with polite updates, or affection is reduced to duty, it creates a coldness that comfort can't fix. You may be eating dinner together every night, sleeping in the same bed, and even watching TV side by side, but you're miles apart. This comfort zone becomes a quiet prison. You're not fighting, you're not crying, but you're also not connecting. And over time, that distance grows so big, it becomes unbearable. Then comes the empty nest. Raising children often distracts from marital cracks. There's always a soccer game, a parent-teacher meeting, or a school fee to handle. For years, the kids become the glue, the shared mission that keeps both parents functioning side by side. But when the last child leaves the house, silence fills the rooms. And for some couples, that silence is deafening. Suddenly, they're alone again, just the two of them. But they realize they no longer know how to talk. They don't know what the other dreams about. They don't laugh like they used to. And it hits them. The relationship has become more about roles than about love. Wife, husband, provider, caregiver, co-parent, but not lovers, not best friends, not soulmates. This is what some call the empty bond. You're tied together, but there's no life in the connection. And once the silence starts to scream, old regrets come crawling back. Retirement brings a lot of things: more time, less structure, and for some, a heavy sense of reflection. Many people over 60 begin to look back on their lives and marriages, and what they often find is not peace, but disappointment. Maybe one partner gave up their dreams for the sake of the other. Maybe there were betrayals that were never fully forgiven, an emotional affair, a lie about money, a moment of cruelty during hard times. Maybe there were years of feeling unappreciated, misunderstood, or invisible. And now, with more time to think and fewer distractions, those buried feelings begin to surface. It's like an emotional attic, packed with boxes labeled "too painful to open." But now those boxes are everywhere, and the air feels heavier because of it. At this stage, many people feel ashamed to admit it. They think, after all these years, shouldn't I be content? But the truth is, regret doesn't care about the calendar. And when it comes, it brings grief. Not just for what happened, but for what never happened. The trip you never took. The apology you never got. The version of you that you lost in the process of being someone's spouse for decades. And the most heartbreaking part of all is the loneliness within marriage. There is a special kind of sadness that comes from being lonely with someone. When you're alone and single, you might expect to feel lonely sometimes. But when you're married and still feel unseen, unheard, or unloved, it cuts deeper. You wonder if something is wrong with you. You feel guilty for not being grateful. And you carry that silence with you like a weight on your chest. You might have conversations about groceries, doctor's appointments, or the neighbors, but never about your heart. You might share a home but not share your fears. You might laugh at the same TV show, but cry alone in the bathroom afterward. For many older adults, this is the secret no one talks about. Being in a marriage that looks fine to everyone else, but feels like slow suffocation on the inside. And because society often glorifies long marriages as the ultimate success, many people feel trapped in shame. They don't want to admit their marriage hurts them. They don't want their children to know. They don't want friends to judge. So they suffer in silence. But emotional pain doesn't disappear just because you hide it. It leaks. It shows up in your health, your blood pressure, your sleep, your appetite. It shows up in irritability, forgetfulness, depression. It shows up in those moments when you stare out the window and wonder, is this it? Is this all there is left for me? That's emotional erosion. It doesn't come like a storm. It comes like a slow drip, one drop at a time. A missed conversation here, a lack of affection there, a wound never addressed, a need never spoken. Until suddenly you look up and the foundation is cracked, and you're standing in the ruins of something that was supposed to hold you. In the second season of Marriage After 60, health becomes a central character in the story, sometimes a villain, sometimes a victim. One spouse may begin to slow down, a stiff knee, forgetfulness, a diagnosis, or something that starts small and grows heavier over time. Suddenly, the balance of the relationship begins to shift. And with that shift comes tension, unspoken, unplanned, and often unwanted. Let's begin with the reality that when care becomes control, it can destroy a marriage from the inside out. At first, it's simple. One partner forgets to take their medicine, so the other steps in. One can no longer drive, so the other takes over all errands. But slowly, the caregiver becomes the authority. They start managing not just health, but choices, what the other eats, wears, watches, even who they talk to. And it's not always out of love. Sometimes it's out of fear. Fear of loss. Fear of watching the person they've loved most in the world fall apart. So they grip tighter. And in doing so, they sometimes smother the very person they're trying to protect. The one being helped may start to feel like a burden, like a child. They aren't treated as a partner anymore, but as a project, a checklist. And if they try to resist or reclaim some agency by refusing a medication or saying no to something, they're met with frustration or guilt. This isn't always done out of cruelty. In fact, most of the time, it's not. It's done out of desperation. But even so, love that becomes control still suffocates, even if the hands are gentle. The caregiver may also feel stuck in a trap they never prepared for. Their golden years are now filled with appointments, sleepless nights, and emotional exhaustion. But instead of asking for help, they stay quiet, out of pride, shame, or belief that this is just what you do. And yet that silence turns to resentment. They begin to resent the body that failed, the time that was stolen, the freedom that disappeared. But what's worse, they may begin to resent their spouse, even though they didn't ask for this either. And the guilt that follows makes everything even harder to talk about. This leads to a cruel emotional cycle. Care becomes control, control becomes resentment, and resentment becomes emotional distance. And the marriage suffers on both sides. Then there's the issue of personal freedom, or rather, the loss of it. Retirement, limited mobility, or financial dependence can feel like invisible walls closing in. One partner may feel stuck at home, especially if they were once independent, traveled alone, or had their own routines. Now they may need permission, or at least coordination, for everything. Simple things become power struggles. Why did you go out without telling me? Why don't you ever help me with anything? You're not eating what the doctor said. You never listen to me anymore. These are not just random complaints. They're cries for control, for space, for breath. But in a small house, with small routines and slowly shrinking circles, there's very little room left for individuality. And when one or both spouses feel like they're losing their sense of self, the marriage becomes less like a partnership and more like a tug of war. Many older adults don't expect this. They thought the hardest years were in their 30s and 40s, raising kids, managing careers, building houses. But in truth, the fight for independence, dignity, and emotional survival is sometimes fiercest after 60. It's also when health takes a toll, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Let's talk about the mental and physical strain of emotional conflict in late-life marriages. Science has shown that emotional tension impacts physical health, especially for older people. Stress, resentment, and constant low-level conflict can raise blood pressure, disrupt sleep, affect the immune system, and worsen chronic conditions like arthritis or diabetes. Caregivers especially suffer silently. Many don't sleep well. Many carry guilt for even thinking, I wish this was over, even if they would never say it out loud. They smile during the day and cry when no one's looking. Some even fantasize about escape, not through death or divorce, but through some miracle where they can feel like themselves again. On the flip side, those who are sick or declining may feel hopeless. They know they are slowing the other down. They hate asking for help. They feel like their body has betrayed them, and they carry the pain of both being a burden and being unloved. Because often what they need most is not medicine, but warmth, not help, but empathy, not another schedule, but a hug. Then comes the silent sabotage, the quiet ways couples begin to hurt each other without realizing it. They stop saying thank you. They roll their eyes. They make sarcastic comments at dinner. They forget birthdays or dismiss hobbies. They avoid eye contact. They only talk about logistics, not love. These are not explosive fights. They are tiny wounds, daily scratches. But over time, they bleed the relationship dry. A marriage doesn't always end in a bang. It often dies in the weight of 1,000 sighs. Worse, some couples avoid the truth altogether. They go through the motions like polite roommates. They've stopped fighting, but only because they've stopped caring enough to try. This is the final stage of emotional erosion, emotional numbness. And for many, it's more painful than anger, because anger means you still want to fix something. Numbness means you've already given up. But here's the truth that's hard to admit. Your health and happiness should not be sacrificed for the sake of appearances. Many people stay in these marriages simply because it's too late. They say, where will I go? Or, what will the children think? But while those are valid fears, they must be weighed against something deeper, your own peace. Because living with someone who makes you feel invisible, unwanted, or trapped can destroy your spirit just as surely as illness can destroy your body. And you deserve better. It's okay to grieve the marriage you once had. It's okay to admit that things are not what you hoped. It's okay to ask for change, even at 60, 70, or 80, because dignity, freedom, and emotional peace are not luxuries. They are needs. Because there comes a moment in many long-term marriages, especially after 60, when the silence becomes unbearable. You look across the room at someone you once couldn't live without and realize you feel like a stranger in your own home. You've tried. You've prayed. You've waited for things to get better. But instead of peace, there's a growing ache deep in your chest, whispering something terrifying yet truthful. This marriage might be slowly destroying me. But what now? Do you keep pretending? Do you keep sacrificing your peace so everyone else can be comfortable? Or do you finally choose yourself? Facing the truth after 60 is one of the bravest things a person can do. Society often tells us that long marriages are a sign of success, that staying together, no matter what, is something to be admired, and for many that's true. But what happens when staying together comes at the cost of your emotional health, your joy, your freedom? The world may celebrate anniversaries, but it rarely sees the tears behind closed doors. It doesn't see the nights you cried quietly in bed while your spouse slept beside you. It doesn't know how often you've swallowed your feelings just to keep the peace. It doesn't see the thousands of little moments you've begged to be heard, only to be ignored. Sometimes the bravest act of love is letting go, not out of anger, but out of mercy. Mercy for yourself. If you're feeling broken in a marriage after decades together, you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not alone. You're just finally being honest. For years, many people, especially women, were taught to keep the family together, no matter how much it hurt, to serve, to forgive, to endure, even if that meant becoming invisible in their own lives. And men too were taught to stay silent, to be stoic, to avoid emotion or confrontation, even if it meant living with quiet despair. But something changes after 60. The masks get heavier, the pretending gets harder, and eventually the desire to live authentically begins to outweigh the fear of rocking the boat. This is when you reclaim your voice. You begin to say things you were once too afraid to say. I'm not happy. I feel more like your nurse than your partner. I miss being touched, being complimented, being wanted. I'm tired of being the only one trying. Saying these things doesn't make you cruel. It makes you courageous. You're not picking a fight. You're picking yourself up. It's not about shaming your spouse. It's about showing up for yourself, maybe for the first time in decades. For some people, this honesty leads to a new chapter of healing within the marriage. Not every broken bond stays broken. Some couples, once the truth is finally laid bare, decide to seek counseling, rediscover shared purpose, or even learn to fall in love again, this time as their older, wiser selves. But for others, honesty leads to a harder truth. This marriage cannot be saved. And that's okay. It doesn't mean your whole life was a mistake. It doesn't mean your love wasn't real. It simply means the relationship has run its course. And staying any longer would mean shrinking into a version of yourself you no longer recognize. At this age, many fear what divorce or separation would mean. What will my children think? Where will I go? Am I too old to start over? But here's something no one tells you enough. You are never too old to choose peace. You are never too old to stop pretending. You are never too old to begin again. Not with a new partner necessarily, but with yourself. Some people over 60 choose to live apart from their spouse, not out of hate, but for breathing room. Others seek legal separation. Some even stay in the same house but agree to stop pretending it's a romantic marriage. And some walk away entirely, choosing to spend their final chapters in solitude or with new friends, new hobbies, even new love. Whatever the path, it is yours to choose, and it is valid. Here's what's beautiful, and what many people don't realize. Peace tastes sweeter when you've known pain. Freedom feels deeper when you felt trapped. Laughter feels louder when it hasn't filled your home in years. Many seniors who've walked away from unhappy marriages report a strange mix of grief and relief. Yes, they grieve the years invested, the family pictures, the history, but they also feel lighter, more alive, free to travel, to sleep in peace, to eat what they want, to cry without hiding, to dance without permission. Some discover passions they buried for years, painting, volunteering, gardening, writing. Others travel, move closer to their grandchildren, or finally decorate their homes the way they always wanted. Some even fall in love again, not just with a new person, but with life. One woman who divorced at 67 said, "I spent 40 years walking on eggshells. Now I walk barefoot in the grass. That's how I know I'm finally living." A man who left his 38-year marriage at 70 said, "I don't hate her. I just love myself now. And for the first time, I'm not ashamed of that." These are not stories of selfishness. They are stories of survival, of people who realized that staying wasn't strength, it was silence. And leaving wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. No matter how long you've been married, no matter how deep the history or how tangled the lives, you still get to choose what kind of story you want to write next. You are not stuck. You are not finished. You are not bound by obligation if it's crushing your soul. Whether you stay and rebuild, live apart peacefully, or walk away altogether, what matters most is that you are honest about what you need, not what others expect, not what tradition says, not what religion or culture insists, but what your heart truly longs for. Because the truth is, your emotional health matters, your peace matters, your laughter matters, and you do not need to die in a marriage just to prove you were loyal. You have the right to feel free, loved, respected, and fully alive, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. So to anyone quietly suffering in their marriage after 60, hear this. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not too old. You are just ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to speak your truth. Ready to choose peace. Ready to live again. And the moment you choose peace over pretending, you begin to reclaim not just your marriage, but yourself.